Hello, everyone, and welcome back. So, what's on tap for today? Well, we're continuing our series of the debates between Ana Kasparian of the Young Turks and Ben Shapiro of the Daily Wire. This is part 6, and the question that was asked in this debate is, as Joe Brandon said, pay your fair share? What does that exactly mean in terms of taxes? Pay your fair share. We're going to get to all of that in the next few seconds. But before we do so, if this is your first time here, if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel. You're watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I'm your guest host for today. My name is Dr. Nasir. Like, share, and follow us. Hit that notification bell. You know what to do. Let's get to the debate between Ana and Ben.
Let's move on to another public policy issue, one that's being debated in Washington right now. Tax the rich is a very popular sentiment. It's also now a fashion statement, I guess, which we've all seen. So when President Biden looks into the microphone and says, pay your fair share, what does that mean?
It means that if you're one of the 55 corporations that literally paid absolutely nothing in federal income taxes in 2020, and in fact received $3.5 billion in tax refunds or rebates, or tax refunds, I should say, maybe you should pay your fair share. But here's the thing, if the tax code is written in a way where corporations can legally take advantage of loopholes and incredibly low effective corporate tax rates, they're gonna do it, right? So it's one thing to say pay your fair share, it's another thing to actually write a tax code that is a little more equitable and ensures that everyone is in fact paying their fair share.
Ben, what's pay your fair share mean?
So there we had it from the progressive left. Ana basically saying, hey, corporations, and you know what? I'm all for that. Corporations, everybody, again, whatever's written in the law, if there are loopholes that are existing, I hate the word loopholes, but if the laws are written in such, everybody takes advantage of those. Whatever the laws are written in the tax code, whether they're corporations, and it's all relative, right? If you can take millions of dollars of tax incentives and get tax refunds, and you have the ability to do that, hey, more power to you. If you're an individual, you're working or you've got a small business, you're going to find a tax attorney, you're going to find a CPA, and you're going to ask him to say, what? Find every single deduction that I can get that's commensurate with my income and what I've done, and find the legal avenue so I have to pay the least amount of taxes. That's the way it is. You want to change it? Go through Congress, go through your representatives, advocate for your, whatever it is, okay, that you're trying to do in terms of have everybody pay more. But the fact of the matter is, America has one of, at least President Trump, one of the least corporate tax rates. And it was good to do business when President Trump was in office, other than it is okay for President during Joe Biden's tenure. Let's see what Ben has to say.
I mean, the obvious answer would be a flat tax, but the longer answer is that the United States has one of the most progressive income tax systems on planet Earth. Most of the systems in, for example, Northern Europe are far less progressive. The top tax rate kicks in a lot lower on the income scale because you have to pay for the large-scale social services. The people who are at the top of the income bracket in the United States, the top quintile, essentially pays all net taxes in the United States. Not some, not most, all. And the reason for that is because there are tax transfers, and the transfer of payments that are inherent in public services do not accrue to the people at the top of the tax bracket. They accrue to everybody else who's receiving that sort of funding. When we talk about higher taxes on corporations, we do not have one of the world's lowest corporate tax rates. We are somewhere in the middle. Look at the OECD countries. We are certainly not the lowest on the totem pole in terms of our corporate tax rate. In fact, right-wing sources like the Heritage Foundation will say that it is much friendlier to do business in places like Denmark or Sweden in many cases than it is to do business in the United States.
Tax rate's pretty high in Denmark and Sweden.
It is. The personal income tax rate is very high in Denmark and Sweden. The corporate tax rate is basically near or on par with that of the United States. If we were to raise our corporate tax rate the way that President Biden is talking about, we'd actually have a higher corporate tax rate than China currently does. The notion that corporations ought to be paying tax at all, in my view, is mistaken, given the fact that the income is immediately either reinvested in the company or passed on to people who immediately pay all of that tax. By the time you actually receive your income in this country, the income's been taxed about 7 different ways. Right? You're getting taxed through the corporation, then it's passed on to you as salary, which is taxed. If you invest it in the stock market and then you sell your stock, that is taxed as capital gains tax. When you die, the government taxes that as well. So how many times can you tax the same dollar before people begin to disinvest?
Oh, okay, right there. Check and mate, folks. That was check and mate to Ana to Ana, basically. I mean, she just came out and said, oh, the typical thing, corporations don't pay their fair share, blah, 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 blah. And Ben basically wrote down, okay, so that's 55 corporations that didn't pay their fair share, in your opinion. What about the millions and millions and millions of Americans who are getting taxed left and right, up and down? I mean, rectally, we're getting taxed how many times can you tax that same dollar in your wages, in capital gains, through other investments, short-term, long-term, debt tax, your state tax, Social Security tax, Medicare. I mean, all these taxes. How many times can that same damn dollar be taxed? So Ben, right out of the gate, comes out and absolutely obliterates Anna's. And when Anna said, oh, she just basically came out and said, oh, those tax rates are pretty high, in the other countries or whatever, or low in the countries. I mean, it's just a matter of fact of saying, and Ben came back and said what? The corporate rates in those countries are low or on par with the United States corporate rates, but the effective tax rates for the citizens are much higher. Is that what we want to live in? And then the other thing, too, is that we have 330 million people living in the United States of America versus what? 15, 20, 30, 40 million living in another country, which is basically, homogenous. It's not a diversified, group of various ethnicities, mostly European and white. So in terms of health care benefits, in terms of medical benefits, in terms of any other thing that the tax incentives are giving back to those people, it's going back to literally the same type of, in terms of, groupings of people. You don't have to worry about the diversity. You don't have to worry about immigration. That's another thing. Immigration. People are coming to these countries, to Europe, to the United States, for what? Because they know once they come here, they can clamp on and latch on to those benefits without paying into the system and getting them almost immediately. Is that what we want to do? Anyways, let's continue with this.
Let me
Even Anna knows that she was smoked on that. Even Anna knows she got smoked on that question. That's why she's smiling over here and she's thinking to herself, damn, I just got absolutely roasted.
I'd like to respond to that, though.
Okay, go ahead.
Of course he wants to respond.
To argue that the corporate tax rates in the United States are too high, or that, first off, let me just touch on the comparison you gave regarding progressive taxes in European countries versus the United States. I mean, yes, the taxes might be higher in those European countries, but what do...
She disagreed and said, yes, they might be higher, but... Or, yeah, you're absolutely right, but it's always a B-U-T.
People living in those countries get in return. They get incredible childcare. I mean, listen, the average American family, two-income household, spends a whopping 22% of their household income on childcare alone, right? So when you're talking about European countries that offer quality childcare, that, by the way, that opens up the opportunity for people to go to work, something that we should maybe think about as we're dealing with this labor shortage. 64,000 women left the job force in April alone. Not because they want to, but because they can't afford childcare. Everything in this country...
That's not one of the reasons why they left. They left because the way that the Biden administration, when they put that package together after COVID, and I know tons of people in our community, in the neighborhood, people that you talk to saying, hey, they're paying me more to stay at home than they are for me to go to work. Why would I be a moron and idiot to go to work and get less? And, right? Doesn't even make any sense. So Anna's completely wrong on that. I mean, there might be some, maybe 10% or 50, a small part of that population for some reason isn't going back to work, but don't say it's because they're having children or because they need to have child care put forth. And there's a lot of companies out there that are providing for child care, either through incentives, through paying for partial amounts of child care, or having child care centers in their place of business as well.
Is privatized. Everything has a for-profit model, and there's consequences that come along with that, including for the business community that might want, a more robust social safety net program, or social safety net to ensure that people feel comfortable enough to go to work, but we don't have that here. So yes, people might pay more in taxes, including those lower on the income scale, but what they get in return is far greater than what people in this country have been getting.
The United States has spent, since the beginning of the war on poverty, some $22 trillion in the war on poverty. We spend an awful lot on social services in this country on a per capita level. In fact, it is very much on par with what the European countries spend. It's just not spent particularly well. When it comes to things like child care, a very young Elizabeth Warren, before she became Senator Elizabeth Warren, specifically wrote about universal child care, and she said that it actually was contributing to what she called the two-income trap in a book that she wrote in the early 2000s. And what she talked about is the fact that there are a lot of women who, for example, may not want to work, and what you're actually doing is incentivizing people to have to go to work because you are now providing childcare, as opposed to providing a competitive advantage to, for example, families where one parent is working. I agree with you, by the way, that childcare is a very difficult issue. I also agree that this is why we used to have, for example, family structures that were conducive to allowing people to help out. There are many businesses that do provide for some form of childcare. We certainly have many businesses that provide for some form of maternity or paternity leave. The European countries, which obviously have been used as a model by a lot of folks on the left, between 1970 and 1993, they experienced exorbitantly low rates of growth. And the reason for that was because they radically overburdened their social safety net systems. It created enormous social problems. It created enormous immigration problems. They had to scale a lot of those back. And
why would it create immigration problems?
It created immigration problems because a lot of people were coming specifically for the benefits.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, yes, that would be to my point, which is it creates more problems.
She just went, yeah, as if that's a great thing to do, to have immigration basically based on, hey, we got freebies and benefits to give for you. We don't care about our own citizens, but you know what? They paid into the system all along. But hey, all you in the rest of the world, yeah, come on over. There's freebies and goodies out here that the people that are working are going to pay for, not only for the people that are for the social safety net, for people who don't have anything or don't have as much. But you know what? Now we're going to pay for what? Illegals and foreigners that are coming over predominantly to do what? Just basically go for the benefits. And that's pretty much it. And she's just, yeah, she's shaking her head and smiling. Absolutely, of course. That's how we're going to build a society, by getting immigration to come over to give freebies and benefits and money to immigrants for not doing any work. Unbelievable.
Problems very often than it's
sure, I guess that's a...
Yes, if I put a free donut sign in my shop.
Zizi goes, sure, but the big B-U-T-T comes out.
People will come for the...
No, but if you have a society that actually takes care of its workers, right? If you have a society that makes your life a lot...
Oh my God, here we go back and forth again. If you have a society that takes care of its workers are being paid. When you enter into a contract with your employer, the employer has said that this is what he's going to pay you, either in a salary or hourly. And you have agreed to that. If you don't agree to it, you find someplace that's going to give you, a much higher salary, much better benefits, and you shop your experience, your expertise, your education, your level of excellence, whatever that is, in whatever business model or employment model that you can offer to your employer so that he can make a profit and in turn pay you a wage that he feels he can do and work at a profit. And it's your job to negotiate, or your job to get the skills and the education and the experience to work up that ladder. And millions of people do that. The problem is here in the United States, leftists, socialists, Marxists are putting into the minds of people that, hey, you don't need to do all that. All right? The CEOs, they're making all the money at the top, and they're not giving anything back to the people at the bottom. And you know what? You don't have to do anything. You don't have to, educate yourself even more. You don't have to get more experience. You don't have to do any of the things to move up the ladder the right and the traditional way. No, you know what? Just stay where you're at right now, but demand everything for you. Demand higher wages, demand more benefits, demand everything, but give nothing back in return. That's what people like Ana and the progressives and the socialists and the Marxists and the others, that's what they're basically trying to say. That really is what they want to, put out there as, I guess, the workforce policy.
Lot easier. People are going to want to immigrate. It's part of the reason why people wanted to come here. People are going to want to live in countries that have both economic opportunity,
the vastest
but
immigration,
also
the vastest
social
immigration,
safety net programs that, again, just make your. I mean, we talk about freedom. If you look at the World Freedom Index, okay, we like to think of the United States as the freest country. We're not the freest country. You look at that list, we're like pretty low down compared to a lot of these Nordic countries. Denmark is top of that list. So
here we go again. We're always being compared to, the Nordic countries, to Norway, to Sweden, to Switzerland, to Finland, to Norway. I mean, all of these out there, right? And they say, oh, they're the freest countries out there. How come millions upon millions upon millions of people, why aren't they going across the fjords to Finland? I mean, there is immigration that's occurring to there, but it's not even close to the immigration that's going to the European countries. When they talk about this freedom index, they put all sorts of things inside there. And health, obviously, is one of those things in that freedom index. And as I said before, you're dealing with a homogeneous set of a population, predominantly white in terms of ethnicity. All right? So in terms of health outcomes, it's pretty well set. You don't have to worry about the black population and the health challenges that are within the black population, or within the Hispanic population, or with the Indian population, or with the Arab population, or with the Jewish population, or with the Italian population, or a whole mix of various different ethnicities and races, that you have in the United States of America. And then also, as I said before, you're dealing with just a smaller amount of people. The population size is so much smaller. So in terms of distributing services out, you're distributing services out to, tens of millions rather than hundreds of millions as you would be doing here in the United States. And then you're talking about land mass across a huge 3,000-mile stretch or 3,500-mile stretch of landmass in the United States versus a completely smaller mass where people are living, maybe more predominantly within the cities, less out in the rural areas in those other countries, the Nordic countries, as Ana is saying. It always is it's not an apples to apples comparison. It's always like apples and meat.
Look, Denmark has a mixed economy. When we have these debates about, socialism versus capitalism, I think that those debates are a little ridiculous because every country is not every country, but most countries are mixed economies.
Right. The United States is
right?
mixed economy.
True. Exactly.
Yep.
Now, the issue with the United States is there used to be a time when public universities were free, right? You didn't have to dig yourself into a massive hole to get an education. There was a time in this country where there was universal child care. That was cut down to the point where it's like no longer in existence unless you're desperate and have like no money and need to take advantage of some programs that are available in some states. But my point is, like, we have an issue here where on one hand, you know, we're experiencing a labor shortage. We want people to go back to work. On the other hand, people literally can't afford the childcare necessary in order to put their kids in a daycare, put their kids in childcare, and be able to go to work without their entire paycheck.
The Biden bill removes many work requirements for many of the payments that are being made to people, and it's incentivizing people not to go back to work, which is why we have 10 million open jobs in the United States and people not coming back to work.
That is not what that bill does.
That's exactly what that bill does, Anna. That's exactly what that bill does. Read the bill yourself. There's incentives inside there, okay, that are disincentivizing people to go back to work. I don't know what the heck you're talking about. But the thing is, nobody read the damn bill before anyway. They just pushed it through. Why is it that people, and you talk to employers and they're saying they're trying to get their employees back. I have friends of mine that are running businesses, said they tried to get employees to come back, and the employees said they're making more money sitting at home than what they're paying at work. So you tell me, don't tell me, all right, that that's not what was in the bill. You can just come out and say it. That doesn't mean that it's true.
In fact, that's not what that.
Let me move
Are you talking
on.
about the $3.5 trillion reconciliation
I am talking about the
bill?
$3.5 trillion bill.
The $3.5 trillion reconciliation
income
bill
tax credit
offers
removed.
universal pre-K, which opens up the opportunity for mothers to go to work if they want to go to work. The $3.5 trillion bill.
She just said it right there, which opens up the ability for mothers to pay if they want to go back to work. If. You just said before that they're 64, they want to go back to work. Now it's if they want to go back to work.
By the way, has all sorts of subsidies for corporations, which I don't really understand why the business community isn't salivating over that, because rather than just going full force with public programs, which I think would be the right way to go, it's offering all sorts of subsidies in these, you know, public-private partnerships. Now, the physical infrastructure bill has a lot more corporate giveaways, which is why the, you know, business community absolutely loves it, offers the chance to privatize public infrastructure, which is why the business community absolutely loves it. But at the end of the day, if we don't create a society where Americans can actually have families and go to work, then we're going to be in a lot of trouble.
So to go back to your immigration point, you made a mention a moment ago of people immigrating to the country for the benefits. That's just abjectly untrue. The fact is that the United States' great immigration growth throughout the beginning of the Republic, all the way up through about 1930, was entirely driven by people who were leaving places that in many cases had broader benefits, places like Germany, to come to the United States where there was no social safety net. The fact is that the vast majority of people who used to leave and come to the United States were coming specifically to build a life knowing that they really didn't have a lot of social safety net. Now, that's not an argument that there shouldn't be some state and local possibility for social safety net, but the notion that the way that you build a successful country that is a world power and is capable of not only making sure that its citizens are taken care of, but essentially making sure that the entire Western world is taken care of, which we did throughout the Cold War, the idea that you do that simply by raising the number of social security payments that you're making to people or benefit payments that you're making to people, that this is the way that you build that sort of economy is just non-borne out by empirical
Okay, we've had a real far-ranging conversation.
Yes.
Ben.
I have to take one thing. I just want to go back and make sure that people understand. When I was talking about where immigration and people are coming now, and you know, Ben said it wasn't borne out by the details, that immigration was fueled by people coming for the benefits. He was talking about since the beginning of the century coming forward. My thing was that I would say within the past few decades, probably the last 30, 40 years or whatever, and especially in the recent few decades, the last 10 or 20 years, a majority of the people, yes, they're coming because they want freedom and they know that they can have some type of a better life in America. But they also know that either through people that have already come here and have told them, or they're hearing from over there, that they come over here and they will be able to get some type of social assistance if they can cross the borders legally or illegally, come over to the United States and basically, you know, mooch off the system and get the benefits without having the years of putting into the system, grab those benefits immediately. That's what's happening. Anyways, round 6, definitely this one, okay. I would say if this was a 10-round fight, you'd probably have to give 9 rounds, to Ben in terms of this one here in part 6. So we appreciate you taking the time. Let us know in your comments below. Do you agree that Ben did better than Anna in this one here in terms of the taxes and paying your fair share. Let us know below. Subscribe to the channel. You're watching the Dr. Nasir Shaikh Show. I've been your guest host for today. My name is Dr. Nasir. Like, share, and follow us. I said comment below. Hit that notification bell. I'll leave you with my final thought, which is, when you're right, you're right. And when you're left, you're wrong. We'll see you again next time, folks. Take care and stay safe.